I'm just going. Hello. Okay, so I still have weirdness with the camera. Yeah, so it looked like you were trying to wipe the camera or something. Yeah, I was seeing if I would get an image, but that's my image. Uh, oh no. So I'll do that. So we don't need this.
Now you make me feel bad.
Huh? What? Why?
Because you were on. Now it's only Glendora and Princess. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Now I'm telling it to go forward and it's not doing what I want it to do. It's not cooperating with me. Now I'm going to put it back on. Let's see if it, there we go. And so, I've added this little thing this year. This is to a few words about our liturgical season. And as we all know, that Lent began on Ash Wednesday, last Wednesday, and it will end on Holy Thursday, which will be April 2nd. Easter is on Sunday, April 5th. And so Lent being our day, our period of fasting and praying and giving alms. And that's just to remind us of things that we do as Catholics. As Catholics, we observe Lent, but we're not the only denomination that observes Lent in some way, shape, or form. A lot of Protestant follow the Daniel fast during the season of Lent, and that's how a lot of Protestants do their fasting. So it is with the different denominations, all the many, many denominations, it is it is observed in some way, shape, or form. So just a reminder of our season. Okay, so let's take a look at what so we know that we have these two versions of the Book of Esther, and it's okay. So we have the shorter version that we find in the Protestant Bible, and then we have the longer version that we find in the Catholic Bible. Now, even though the Protestant Bible, we've talked about this before, does most of them now, if not all of them, do have a section that includes the deuterocanonical books. So the short version, which is the Masoretic, in the Masoretic text, so that's the Hebrew version, is the one that we usually see in the Protestant Bible. These are the 10 chapters that are from the Hebrew text. In it, there's not a whole lot of mention of God. And it's it's based on the text that's been found in the in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And the Dead Sea Scrolls are not this cultic thing. It's a really um worthwhile set of writings that give us that add to our scripture. And so and looking at that last bullet, how where they're saying that some Jewish scholars have objected to the fact that the book doesn't have many divine references. And then so they believe that that probably led to some of the probably led to why it was excluded from the Septuagint. Okay. Now the long version, which is in with the Septuagint, so this is the Greek version. It has the 6 extra chapters, and that we don't see in the Hebrew version. The additions, as we see them in our Catholic Bible, are put in. They're not just added at the end or added at the beginning. They're put in certain places. So we have Mordecai's dream, which is not in the Hebrew text, and then Mordecai saving the king's life. The letter that went out where the massacre of the Jews was where the king ordered the massacre of the Jews because of Haman telling him that he should do this. Then we have these prayers that Mordecai and Esther do. And then we have Esther who's goes risk her life to go and have a conversation with the king. And then we have an additional letter that denounces Haman. And so these are the additions that we looked at. And where it makes it look like we end up with these 16 chapters, it doesn't really end up with these 16 chapters. It's kind of weird how it's placed. And so this side by side little comparison. So in the Hebrew, the Megillat Esther, that's the Hebrew. God is not mentioned, but God here is saying he's not mentioned anywhere in the text, but there's a hint to God a couple of times. And then God is mentioned over 50 times in the apocryphal text or the deuterocanonical text. In the original one, the characters are not seen as being so devout and as practicing Jews. In the second one, there is a lot of emphasis placed on the religious nature of the characters. The In the second one, that Esther is trying to keep kosher while she's in the palace. In the second one, Esther appears kind of weak, I think. But in the original one, they really focus on her being strong. And as we start our discussion, I have my thoughts about Esther. And in the first one, Esther is the hero of the story, but in the second one, God is truly the hero of the story. So we're going to begin by looking at the video. And we haven't done a video I don't think we've done a video this session, have we? Because we did some videos last year, but now I'm going to see if I can pull it up. And then I'm going to do the stop share. And now to make sure there it is. And then I have to do my screen share again. Father Rich is so good at doing this stuff fast. There it is. Now, let me know if you can see and hear it. There it is. Can everyone see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
The Book of Esther,
Can you hear it?
Expanded Edition.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
In our first video on Esther, we explored the amazing story about the courage of Esther and Mordecai in the face of horrible evil. It's the only book of the Bible that doesn't mention God, not even once. But this omission is on purpose. The author is inviting the reader to look for signs of God's activity behind the scenes of the story. And here's a summary. Esther and Mordecai are Jewish exiles in the Persian capital of Susa. Esther is providentially elevated to become queen around the time that Haman tricks the king into decreeing a genocide of the Jewish people. But ironically, Haman ends up having to honor Mordecai, and then Haman is executed in the very place he was planning to kill Mordecai. After this, Haman's schemes are reversed as the king decrees that the Jewish people should defend themselves during the days called Purim. The book concludes with the Jewish people flourishing in exile as Esther and Mordecai are elevated to rule alongside the king. Now, the Book of Esther was designed as part of a unified collection of scriptural scrolls, later called the Torah, Prophets, and Writings, or in Hebrew, Tanakh. The collection took shape after the exile of the Israelites to Babylon, and for generations, Jewish prophets and scholars studied these texts and produced the books that we are familiar with today, Esther among them. But this process of studying and writing continued, and some scrolls were expanded in ways that made the collection even more interconnected. This sometimes resulted in a longer edition of biblical books, and this is what happened to the Book of Esther. The expanded edition of Esther in Hebrew was produced in multiple stages, sometime around the 3rd to 2nd centuries BC. It was then translated into Greek, somewhere in the 2nd to 1st centuries BC. And while this translation eventually fell out of use in Jewish circles, it became widespread among Jesus' followers in the first centuries of the Christian movement. In fact, the expanded Greek version became the standard biblical version of Esther in the Roman Catholic and Orthodox traditions, while Judaism and later Protestant Christians went with the earlier and shorter Hebrew version. So let's explore the new material in the expanded edition. But first, remember how the earlier edition of Esther was designed as an elaborate symmetry. The first half of the story leads up to the great reversal between Haman and Mordecai, and then the book's second half mirrors and reverses every matching section from the first. Now, the new material of Esther's expanded edition enhances this mirror design with a new matching prologue and then an epilogue. The prologue begins with Mordecai having a dream that previews the entire story to come. He sees a dark world of chaos with 2 roaring dragons that rouse the nations to battle. And then God's people are there crying out for deliverance, and then a tiny spring bubbles up into a great river as the sun rises and the oppressed are exalted over the wicked. Whoa. Mordecai's dream makes for a strange picture, but every one of these symbols is drawn from texts elsewhere in the scriptures. The image of 2 conflicting dragons is drawn from the story of Moses' snake staff versus the snake staffs of Pharaoh's sorcerers. This is also connected to the Exodus image of God's oppressed people crying out for help, along with the symbol of salvation at sunrise when Pharaoh's army was taken out by the waters of the sea. And that spring that becomes a river is adopted from the Garden of Eden story as it was described by the prophet Ezekiel. For him, this river is a divine source of life, bringing new creation to a world of death. Mordecai's dream is also patterned after the dreams of Joseph and Daniel. They're an invitation to the reader to discover deeper meaning in this story, to see how the downfall of Haman and the deliverance of the Jews is part of a larger cosmic drama of God's purpose to bring about a new Exodus and a new creation. This dream prologue is mirrored by a new epilogue to the book, where Mordecai, who's now exalted as a ruler, recalls and interprets his dream. He realizes that he and Haman were the 2 dragons, duking it out like Moses and Pharaoh. And Esther was both the river of life and the sunrise of God's salvation for the oppressed. So cool. The next major difference in Esther's expanded edition is found in the matching scenes where the king is writing out decrees. In chapter 3, when Haman persuaded the king to order the destruction of the Jews. In the second edition, we're actually given the text of the decree. The king justifies the annihilation of the Jewish people by claiming that their unique way of life threatens the empire's stability. It's an ironic critique of leaders who mask their greed and racism with noble-sounding words. And interestingly, the language in this decree is drawn from the speeches of Daniel's Babylonian enemies in the book of Daniel. When we turn to the corresponding story in the book's second half, we see Mordecai and Esther persuading the king to make a new decree that will reverse Haman's decree. And here again, the new edition of Esther supplies the text of the decree. The king describes Haman as arrogant and deceptive, and he uses imagery drawn from the books of Daniel and the Psalms. The Jews, on the other hand, he describes in glowing terms. The king praises the laws of the Torah with language taken right out of Deuteronomy. The last main expansion in Esther's longer edition is placed in chapter 4. It's when Mordecai and Esther learn about Haman's decree, and they mourn and fast for 3 days. Now, usually in the Bible, when people fast, they also pray for God's help. Now, in Esther's first edition, nobody was praying. But in the expanded version, everybody's praying. And once again, the language is drawn from earlier biblical stories. Mordecai's prayer sounds just like Moses' intercession on Mount Sinai in the story of the golden calf. And Esther's prayer draws from the prayers of Daniel and Nehemiah. So then, when you back up and you compare Esther's shorter and longer editions, the message of the story is still the same. The more subtle underlying themes of the earlier edition are more explicit in the later one. These differences also give us a window into how biblical authors interpreted and connected stories and ideas from different scriptural scrolls in the final stages of the Old Testament's formation. The expanded version of Esther is more clearly woven into the unified storyline of the Tanakh collection. It's about God's purpose to raise up the seed of Abraham to overcome evil through their suffering, so that all creation can be liberated in a new Exodus. And that's what the first and second editions of Esther are all about.
Okay, now let's do this. So, no, I don't want you, Esther. I don't want you back. Let me get this correct. I want to get back to my PowerPoint. There you are. There. And I've lost. Okay, so does everyone still hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so what I'm having issues with is getting back to where I was. There's Zoom. I want to get rid of. I want to get rid of Bible Project. And go back here and get back to my PowerPoint. That I seem to have lost. But I think this is it. But for some reason, I'm losing my share screen capability. Okay, so I keep coming back. Okay, bear with me. That's not what I want. Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Share. So am I there?
Yep.
Does everyone see
Yeah.
my tentative plan?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So it looks like I'm where I'm supposed to be, kind of, sort of. Okay. Yes. So let's have some talk about Esther. But I just want to point out, so when I send out the video, so there's an additional video that you can watch if you so desire, and a couple of articles that you can take a peek at if you like. I don't want what stood out to me. I want questions. So, my usual questions. So what in the chapters did stand out to you? What does it say to you? And how can you apply it to your life? So, anyone have anything in particular that they would like to share about Esther?
Well, I wanted to comment on your comment.
Which
And
comment?
you said in the second, the more extended version, you thought that Esther was weak, or did I have them mixed up? And one of them
No, and
said,
and that she kind of looked a little weak as compared to how she looked in the first version. Go ahead.
well, I was gonna ask you, what was it that made you say that?
So she see, to me, Esther didn't so much look like this heroine. She seemed to me to have fallen into liking this position that she had in the harem, and that she because Mordecai had to talk her into um going and speaking to Haman, which she did, because, and that's why I say kind of weak, because the fact that she did decide that she was going to go and have words with the
The
king, even
king.
though she was risking her life.
And that was, for me, that was the the guard the God part of the scripture. She prayed and she asked him to pray. Everybody was praying. Actually, the two of them were both praying that she would get up the nerve, I guess. And in my mind, she's and I wouldn't say she liked the position, but I thought it was what she knew. I don't know, you don't get a sense of the age, but because he was taking care of her, and when they said they wanted to look at all the young people, all the young virgins in the country, I assumed she was young. So I understand what you're saying, but in my mind, it was more, um, yeah, I think I don't know how old I would have to be if I was going to risk my neck to go in there and talk to the king. But I do think that I understand what you mean now. But I didn't pick that up as you did. But
I
I
didn't
I
pick it up alone.
what'd you say?
I didn't pick it up alone.
Um,
It was
Gwen,
something that was pointed out to me. Yes.
yeah, I, I didn't pick up Esther necessarily being weak until you made that comment, but I had noted that, and something that stood out to me is that when Mordecai went to Esther to get her to go to the king, he told her, that if she didn't go to the king at such a time as this, that help and protection would come to the Jews from another quarter. But if Esther, but that if Esther, um, but if Esther didn't, that she would be putting her family, her father's family, in peril, that they would perish. So I felt like he was she was being reluctant, not just timid, but maybe just reluctant. But then I did see, I read somewhere that Esther abhorred being queen and had not honored any of the king's feast or drunk wine when she was called to his court.
And that's a point, yeah. But because I kind of felt like she fell into liking it. But you know what when you say um what she knows, that's something to me to really think about because my I may have been looking at Esther, and I've said
as
it
a grown woman.
through my no, I may have been looking at her through my 21st century eyes, you know, and but what Carmelita's saying, what she knows is putting on my, what was it, um 2 or 3 century BC boots, sandals, and walking in those shoes, and realizing that that I've got 2,000 years of women's positions changing that influence the way I look at things, and I have to always remember that.
I think the other for me, I I don't know whether it's my 21st century or whatever, but he's like put him in the position of her father, and I just don't know how, and then you got to compete to be something that you didn't really desire. Not that she didn't desire to be it, because she probably said, "Oh yeah, I'll be the queen," but the point was he put her up to it and let her go off and do that. It's almost like a sale or
And
whatever.
and and because in my slide where I'm saying things that stood out to me, I had this question: was Mordecai married to Esther? Because I got that feeling that he was prepping her to be his wife, and it made me think of Abram and Sarai,
What?
because
How did you? I didn't get that. I thought her parents died and he was raising her.
and
Yes, and
and
that
and and it was kind of like that, but it was something that I read, and I wish I had
I
put it.
thought in reading that they said that her parents had died and he had raised her.
Yeah.
right, and
Yeah,
that
but there
he
was
took her
a
there.
part that said that he had something about him prepping her to be his wife.
I thought that I read I had another reading of that said he wanted them to think that she was his wife for her protection.
Protection, right.
Okay, so that's me misreading then. But the whole idea of the wife came up. But when I had in my head, and I'm going to skip down for a second, when I had in my head that were they married, and was he denying that they were married? Let me go
Mm-mm. I didn't get that.
here.
Well, I'm only going by the scripture because I have to admit I read nothing outside of that.
And so here's where, so I looked it up, and I got, and when I looked it up, most of the things that I've said, I found was saying that that she was not his wife. But then there were a couple that said, yeah, so there are two views on the relationship between Mordecai and Esther. That she was his wife is shown in one translation of the Septuagint. That she was his adopted daughter is shown in the Hebrew, in the original, and translated Masoretic text. And so that was part of the addition that gave this, not direct, but this put the question mark there. And because since I had the question mark, I said I need to look this up to make sure that I'm not crazy. Even though I do feel like I was crazy with a little support from someone else who was crazy enough to think that. But most of the text does have her as his adopted daughter. But it's still daughter because like I said, when it came to the was the wife thing, it really made me think of when Abraham denied um Sarai that she was his wife and had her pretend she was his sister because he was afraid that the men were going to kill him to get her because of her beauty. You know, that beauty thing comes up over and over and over again.
Yeah, but I could see him do well. I'm always on the other side. I could see him telling his daughter, he's old, she's young. Here's an opportunity for you to be in a better situation than I'm going to be able to give you. Not realizing that it would come down to she's in a position to help her people, but I think he was just thinking, this is a good thing. Everybody else is going to be trying out for the basketball team. You go try out too. See how it works for us.
And he really did set her up to be in that beauty contest, not
Right.
thinking that she would necessarily win, but
He
if you
put her in
win,
there.
that'll be wonderful.
Yep.
I don't think that Mordecai had much to say about Esther being selected to go to the king.
Oh no. You mean
Yeah. So
from the
because it
beginning?
says that, she was his adopted daughter. In one place they say that he was her uncle. The other place says that they were cousins.
Right.
So when the king summoned all of the young, beautiful virgins to come to be a part of this beauty pageant, I don't think any of them had a choice. So I don't
No.
see where
Well,
Mordecai put
after
her up to do that.
say that again.
I didn't see how Mordecai put Esther up to go to the king at the
Oh,
beginning.
I thought he did. But
I thought he did also.
I
Yeah,
didn't
He
read this
got her
last week.
in.
I agree because I think she didn't have a choice because it
Because
was a
it
decree.
says,
It was a
verse
decree.
8, chapter 2, when the king's order and decree had been
Right.
proclaimed, and many young women they were brought together to the royal precinct of Susa. So,
It was no choice.
right.
Oh, wasn't Mordecai. I I didn't read this last week or month. Um so I didn't have that detail in my head.
Mordecai did make arrangements for her to get into the king's court to be trained for the
That's
12
what I
months and
thought.
hairstyles and stuff. He
I still
didn't
didn't
get
see
her
that.
summit. He didn't
How
get
did
her
Mordecai do
summoned.
that?
That's because she was a Jew and had to, they were keeping that a secret at that time too.
Right,
Right, but
because
she
he told her not to let it out.
not to
Right.
let
And
it
she
And
out.
was a Jew. Uh-huh.
But
Yeah,
he
but
did arrange for her to get into the king's harem. But
mhm.
right.
Mordecai didn't have anything to do with the king calling all the virgins to
Right,
him.
right.
Right.
Both ways, yeah.
Yes.
I just want to jump in and say I don't think she was his wife because she was supposed to be a virgin.
Well,
So I don't think she was. I think she was his cousin
Cousin, yeah.
because it
That's what
says
cousin or
my cousin too.
right.
Mhm.
So I think there was a cousin, and I also think that the king put the decree out,
Yeah.
and then the
Mhm.
girls had to line up. And my version says that the eunuch is the one that selected the girls that would come into
Yes.
the king's court. So he was the one, and then once she got there, she found favor with him, and he gave her preferential treatment.
yeah.
Yeah.
But and it was amazing the preparation and
Right. Has
it was
anybody seen One Night with the King?
That's coming on.
It's
I just
coming
saw a
on Friday
commercial
night.
that's coming on the 27th.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that's a great Esther movie.
Yeah, I saw it one time before, but it'll
Yeah.
be on the 27th. I think it's TBN.
Yes, at
It'll
eight
be on it.
o'clock.
Yeah.
Probably one of those channels I don't have.
You said TBN. I don't even know that channel.
Oh, well, I know it, but I don't think I have it.
It's Turner Broadcasting Network.
Yeah.
Turner Broad. Oh, because I do
Broadcasting
T.
Network.
It's not TBN. Turner
Turner
TBN.
Broadcasting Network.
This
Yeah.
is a different
Trinity. I
Turner.
thought it was Trinity.
Oh, it's not Turner.
Okay.
Oh,
Trinity
you getting
Broadcasting.
mixed up, but yeah, it's TBN.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Trinity Broadcasting.
Okay.
It's free. It's on a channel on Fios. So if you have Fios,
Yeah.
What's it
it's
Yeah.
called again?
I live in
it's channel
Baltimore
two
City.
nine
We can't
five.
get
One Night with
Fios.
the King.
Okay, thank you.
Because I
Fios
can
is not
find it.
available to us in the city.
It should be TBN is on Comcast as well.
Yeah, but you have to have that. I just reduced my cable because I was spending so much money, and
Oh,
every day I get a reminder that I have cut off my nose to spite my face
That's
because
Mhm.
exactly what I did.
it's
I
not
only
a
saved
premium
$50,
channel.
but it was
And
the
I
point.
saved a
You know what I
hundred
mean?
dollars.
It's
And
not
I
a
only
premium channel though.
I'm paying for it.
Y'all ever considered just having internet and doing Philo? Philo has a whole lot of channels that's more than what basic cable had, and it's only 20 something dollars a month.
well,
You
I've thought
probably
about
can
it, but it's a what do you call it? It's a change.
I was gonna say it's
a
a
streaming
habit
That's
thing.
service.
all it is. It's a change.
Mm-hmm. You said
But
Philo? What's Philo?
It's
How's it spelled?
PHILO. It's a one of the paid channels, but it's only $25 a month, and you have a whole lot of channels, all of your basic cable channels, all of your TV channels,
And who is
and a
that
lot more
talking?
comes with that.
Who's talking?
This Maxine.
Oh, Maxine, thank you.
Uh-huh. I did that with my mom because when she had cable, it was almost $200, and all she had was basic cable. She didn't have internet service, so I called and got her the Xfinity Internet Essentials for it's $14.95 a month. It was $9.95 when she first got it. So they gave her the $9.95 internet, and then she had the $25. Well, at that time it was $20 for Follow, and we had more cable than we had the first time.
Well, see, you know how the story didn't start out with God directing you to direct me to get rid of it, but sounds like that's where it's ending up.
well,
And that's what
that's
a
true.
lot of people are getting rid of, and that's what they're doing. They're getting the Philo because they can watch a lot of stuff. Then if you have the stick, you can still watch all of the other free stuff that's on the stick and stuff.
Does
Get a
that
stick
have
for
to
about
be a broken
$20.
stick or is that the regular stick?
The regular the fire stick, the regular fire stick. I added that to the TV, had my son hook it up for me, and we get all of the like your free channel, like your Tubies and a lot of the channels is free, and then whatnot on there. We watch it. So I have more cable now than I watch, and it's a whole
Oh,
lot less cheaper.
Yeah,
that's what I want, cheaper.
I had FiOS, and I had some changes. I had to get high speed internet, and when the technician came to the house, he told me to get YouTube TV, and that would cover. I would be able to get rid of most of cable because it would all be. I could see almost the same things on YouTube TV.
Yeah, somebody else did that. Got rid of their cable and got YouTube TV. Anyway, I
So
have to
we're
get
gonna
off to get
come
on my
back.
next call. So
Yeah,
I'm sorry
but
that I took us down the the rabbit hole of cable TV.
you can just pull Follow up on your internet and just see all of the channels. They'll show you all of the channels they got.
All right. Good night, everyone. I'll see you
Good
next week.
night.
Good night.
All righty.
Night.
So does anyone else have something that they want to say about this story?
I
Um,
do. Good night, everyone. I'll jump in really quick. I'm house sitting at the moment, but I don't know if it strikes anyone with Esther the element of trafficking. When you type that into YouTube, it actually comes up a few times um, as a talk, and I didn't listen to them because I didn't want it to sway or influence my opinion. Was Esther trafficked? And I don't know if because at this current point in popular culture, and I try not to watch or listen to a whole bunch of news, but I'm vaguely familiar with what's going on with all the Epstein drama and all that saga. But just throughout the Bible, and I think Esther highlights how often women can be treated like I think I read this somewhere too, that the women are like the collateral damage, right? Like the women are not the agent generally, like they're seen as like they're disposable. They are a means to an end. And here you have Esther, who is this young girl whose uncle is willing to kind of like push her out and be like, hey, do what you need to do. I guess like Miss Sharon was saying, this will be better for you. You will be able to, come up and live a better life than I can provide you if you attach yourself to this powerful and wealthy man. And that still is quite prevalent in our society. I know we read a lot of things where women are kind of like mistreated and kind of moved around like pieces on a checkerboard. I was listening to Beloved recently, and Toni Morrison gives an excellent like description of how no people were constant in her life. Like enslaved people were
Mm-hmm.
treated like checker pieces, and no one would stop playing checker just because my children were involved. And that kind of stuck with me. That stuck in my head. So it's expected that Esther will like just do what her uncle is telling her to do, and you go into this harem, try to win your place with this man, that women had to kind of curry the favor of men to succeed or like do well in life. Or what we've talked about before, be the mother of many sons or be the wife of someone important. Like your worth was your place and your value to the men like in your orbit. But if anybody watched any of the stuff about R. Kelly. I didn't watch any of it, but I saw someone on a commercial or I mean a brief video say something about his goddaughter or someone that was connected to him, that the woman responsible for this girl, her godmother, her aunt, or whoever, was like, yeah, when you go in there and speak to him, when you greet him, sit on his lap. When you ask him for whatever the girl was to ask for, some meeting with the music executive or something like that. So we kind of look at this stuff and you're like, well, people don't do this today. And they sure do.
They do.
They sure do, unfortunately. Like they will serve their daughters up, their nieces up, their whomever, like, to use what they got to get what they want, like as the song says. I mean, that's not something that's behind us. So while reading it, I kind of felt a sense of her being like trapped in something that was so much bigger than she was. And she kind of had to figure out how to maneuver. In the introduction in my NAB Bible, it says that this is definitely literature, right? This is a story told. We don't take Esther as a person. This is a story kind of like Job, a story with religious overtones to teach you a lesson.
Mm-hmm.
But I just felt that suffocating sense that she was this young woman and she was trapped. And she kind of had to make the best out of being in this situation that she didn't necessarily want to be in.
And see, I had this feeling of her being what I call prostituted by the uncle. Because I mean, it's to me, trafficking and all of those things are just different words for prostituting. Someone else, they're taking advantage of this female's feminism, of her femaleness, and making use of it for whatever reason. Whether she's in charge of the prostitution or someone else is in charge of the prostitution. When we have someone else in charge of it, we call it trafficking. But it's still all, in my opinion, the same thing. And I see that quite standing out in this book also.
Can I wanted to just say something about the trafficking and the prostituting. I see this as, Esther's situation being a little bit different, because if you think of it from the trafficking and the prostituting point of view, then Esther would have been having sex with the people who were she would have been made available for sex for the other people, but these were all virgins who were waiting for this one night with the king.
Right. Yes, they were prepping. They spent a lot of months prepping themselves for that one night for that one night of sex. Yeah, I mean, but you're right. But
Well, that's what Thursday, that's kind of how we understood it, or how it was talked about, that this was a very long process of an audition, if you will. Like, it sounded to me like, as I read it, and I'm in a different place in it right now, but it sounded like it was a sexual audition of sorts, because it made a point that when the girls were called, they were called at night. And then someone said, well, they stayed all day. But still, the girls, they stayed all day, they stayed all through the night, and they left in the morning. And someone else brought up on Thursday that when they left, they didn't return to the same harem. They went to a different one. And it was kind of like, well, why? Because I think it would be to delineate between those who were virgins who had not had sex yet versus those that did. That's kind of what it seemed like, that the king was allowed to just like go through and like, I'm going to have a night with each one. And when someone grabs me, when I like that particular one, that's who I'll go with. And I have a question though about, I don't know if this question comes up for anybody else. In chapter 4, where Esther is firmly in place and she's the queen now, and Mordecai is kind of going to her. My subtitle is Mordecai exhorts Esther. And he's saying, well, hold up, don't get too comfortable. You're not necessarily safe. It says in chapter 4:12, he says, do not imagine that you are safe in the king's palace, you alone of all the Jews. Even if you now remain silent, relief and deliverance will come to the Jews from another source. But you and your father's house will perish. Who knows, perhaps it was for a time like this that you became queen. And then she says, fast, I'll go. I want to get courage. You fast, my maids and I'll fast. If I perish, I perish. But what stuck out to me was, you and your father's house will perish. So I kind of am like, well, is that kind of a veiled threat? Like, why would she perish if the king didn't realize that she was Jewish? Like, how was the king going to know that she was Jewish? If she was there and all this time she's been passing, even if everyone was, found out and murdered, how would they have known that she was Jewish? That just stuck out in my head. Like, what, was he kind of threatening her? Like, we're not going to all go down without telling them that you're Jewish too.
and you see where I said when Mordecai approached Esther, when to approach the king, he shamed her into help. And maybe I should say threatened her into help instead of shamed, because that's what I was referring to when I wrote that up there. So
Yes, well, earlier, when you were saying that you saw Esther as weak, that was the point that I was saying, that when Mordecai told her that if she didn't help, help would come from the Jews from another quarter. So I was wondering, what would be that? What would be this other quarter that Mordecai was telling her
referring
that, that
to,
that the help for the Jews would come from?
and that I don't
Well,
know.
in my footnote, it says 4:14. It was that exact verse. Perhaps at such a time as this, we'll get relief from elsewhere. From another source, probably Mordecai refers to divine aid. The Greek editions C are explicit about this. In chapter C, right after, is the prayer of Mordecai and the prayer of Esther. So if you take C, which is our, Catholic additions to it, then he's essentially saying, if you don't help us, God is going to help.
God will.
God's going to make a way. But I just wondered, what did he mean by, like, you won't be safe? Like, if she was passing all along, why wouldn't she have been safe?
Unless he was going to tell on her.
Right. Yeah. And also in Esther's prayer, what struck me, what I thought was beautiful, Queen Esther, seized with mortal anguish, fled to the Lord for refuge. Taking off her splendid garments, she put on garments of distress and mourning. In place of her precious ointments, she covered her head with dung and ashes. She
Right.
afflicted her body severely, and in place of her festive adornments, her tangled hair covered her. So the way that she was willing, even after she had been in this privilege, she was the queen and all these feasts and all this stuff, she completely mortified herself before she even came to God praying. It was like, all of this is, I'll give all this. I don't care about all this. Lord, we need you to help.
I can see that. Yeah. But but she did make those decisions to do that because she did go through, oh yeah, taking taking away all the quote unquote beauty accents and put on her sackcloth. And and I have to say that when it said that she put on this dung, all I thought about was, I just cannot imagine putting this poop on me. So, that is quite extreme.
It sort of reminds me, I don't know if anybody's familiar with Saint Rose of Lima. She was a good friend to St. Martin de Porres. I know most of us are probably familiar, we know about St. Martin de Porres. Well, he and St. Rose of Lima were friends. And she was she was called Rose as a child because of her beauty. She was really pretty. And she got so tired of all the attention on her physical beauty that she, scarred herself. Like, she mortified her, did all the things so that people wouldn't focus on, so that she would look ordinary. And it wasn't quite to this extent with Esther, but it just reminded me of that like, she wanted not to be the center of attention for how she looked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Also in Esther, in C, that's how it's labeled
I know the edition A, the
in the edition
edition B.
14, the beginning of her prayer, she says, "My Lord, you alone are our King. Help me, who am alone and have no help but you." And I thought that was beautiful. For I'm, taking my life in my hand, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm alone and I have no help but you.
And that was 14. What was it? What was it? Because I had my
It's
14.
chapter C, verse 14. It's the beginning of Esther's prayer.
Okay. Please, the mortal angels she took off the garments of you said verse 14. Okay, that's what
Yeah, verse
I like
14.
I like to circle the, yeah, okay, but save us by your hand. That's what my line is beginning. I like to circle these specific verses that stand out to people in my okay.
Yes. And how she, throughout it, I mean, I'm not going to read the whole prayer because I know we've all looked at it. But in 17, she says, but
Yes.
now it's still in Esther's prayer.
Yeah, I mean, I just focused on 17. That was
Yeah.
confirming because
But
she was not eating at his table.
we have sinned in your sight, and you have delivered us into the hands of our enemies because we worship their gods. You are just, O Lord. So a lot of times when I think we've talked about this theme before, like a global sense of repentance, like on behalf of all people. And it seems like these prayers, and what we're reading in the Catholic chapters, like their prayers, they admit that, like, we did wrong. like we, it's nobody pointing the fingers. They don't say, I was trying to hold it together, but some of these Jews, they just wouldn't do right. Like kind of in the Old Testament where Aaron is like, look, I don't know what happened. I was trying to do the right thing and I came back and this calf just came out of nowhere, right? Like they're really honest about we did wrong and we deserve what's happening to us, but have mercy on us.
Mhm. And see, that's the part that's, how the Septuagint added these things to show, to really point out God, because I think that was part of the addition. And whereas the original just hinted at God once or twice, but didn't mention God. But God is all throughout in those editions, because they changed the like the that side by side comparison that I had up. It went from Esther being the quote unquote hero to God being the hero. Because once they added God in it, I mean, it was like, okay, God is it is God that is saving you all, and Esther is the tool by which he's doing this, but it's definitely God.
In almost all, I feel like, of the what's stricken from the Protestant Bible, you should say, like everything that they cut out, the editions that we're reading, it's mostly like really long prayers that seem to get the axe. And I enjoy reading how other, holy people or even holy characters, the way they pray, the way they talk to God, is like really inspirational to me to even use those exact words, but just to notice how we've talked about this before that Miss Carmelita shared with us, the acts that you acknowledge or you adore God for who he is. You confess your sins, you give thanksgiving, and
Hmm.
then you bring forth your supplications. You just don't jump in like Father Rich said, like it's a grocery list. Like, Lord, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do this? Can you do the next thing? Right? Like their prayers are really long because most of the time they start out with really acknowledging God for who he is first. And then they go through the rest of what they're saying. And in Mordecai's prayer, I was stricken by the detail of where he apologizes. In chapter C, Mordecai says, in 5 is verse 5. You know, Lord, that it was not out of insolence or arrogance or desire for glory that I acted thus and not bowing down to the arrogant Haman. I would have gladly kissed the soles of his feet for the salvation of Israel. But I acted as I did so as not to place the honor of a mortal above that of God.
Hmm.
And he goes, well, not out of arrogance that I'm acting thus. But he's kind of like saying, I could have done this and I probably would have, saved everyone a lot of hassle. But this is why I behaved the way that I did. It wasn't just my stubborn pride. That's what I thought was holy and worshiping you. And I almost wish in this, that's wishful thinking. That's a modern brain thinking. But like what Vashti thinks of all this. Like what was Vashti off saying? Like she rides off into the sunset and we don't hear any more about her.
I know.
But like what would have been her opinion or what was her point of why she would, why she refused? What was Vashti's prayer? How did she feel? Was she a woman scorned or was she praying similar to Mordecai? Like, Lord, it wasn't out of my vain refusal to be obedient to my husband, who I know is the king. This is why I didn't want to come to his party. I think Miss Bernita Thursday said it was, and we've said this before, that in some ways it's understood that he wanted her to come nude with just the crown on.
Yeah, that's the I got that impression also in a reading, and I don't remember which reading. It was probably some student analyzing the text, but that's the impression I got, that, and I get the impression that this was not uncommon for
Oh,
them to do this to these women who were in these harems. to just, and that, or these women who were at their disposal. You know, that it was, the king felt that it was his responsibility to his guests, his male guests, to put the his women, whether it's the queen or not, on display and at there, right there for them. Because that's why when you talked about the trafficking, because the whole Epstein thing came into my head so much as I was reading this, that these women are there for these men, and it is a shame that we see that attitude still exists today. I think that you had mentioned that before. We think that it's not there, but it is. It's out there. And it is, in my opinion, it is so amazing, the power of a man's the power of a man's libido over his thoughts. That the whole sex drive is stronger than anything.
Plus, the king had a party of drunken men,
Yes.
and she didn't want to go in there and be objectified. And if he wanted to show her off either nude or partially clad, there's no telling what he would have allowed
Them to do.
to his wife.
Mm-hmm. And it makes you feel like, what is a wife for? I mean, definitely the definition of a wife, or the opinion of a wife, was 100% different than in today's world. And again comes down to what they know and how they survived. I mean, you could have a ball working on doing papers on this from so many different angles.
Miss Gwen, I want to share. You weren't there Thursday, so I'll share this again. If anyone was there Thursday and heard this, forgive me for repeating. But I watched something that talked about how we could, with our 21st century sandals, be misinterpreting what a harem is. Because in their culture, a harem was not necessarily this sexual, it wasn't like what we have in our minds as like a brothel or a strip club. It wasn't that. It was that harems were spaces where only women were there, right? Except for the eunuchs. Like it was for women to be kind of in their own element, getting together, doing their own thing outside of free of the male gaze, if you will. And that in and of itself does not sound bad to me, because I was saying how there don't seem to be very many. I mean, that's why I love this women's Bible study, places that you can be among women and just be comfortable to say the things and have the kind of discussion that you want to have around other women, because they get it.
Mm-hmm.
And, 20 something years ago, when my oldest when I had her baby shower, like it was a time that things like baby showers, like men weren't there, like now you go to those kind of events and all the guys are there. It used to be the hair salon, like men weren't, that was a place you could go and it was like just women there. Well, that's not the same anymore either. So just the beauty of having a place where like women can like hang and chill and hang out and be amongst women and be just like at peace in that space with women. And that's kind of, if you think about it that way, it makes sense why Vashti was like, no, I'm good. Like she's hanging out in her element with just women and she's having like her girls' night or her girls' hangout or whatever. Like, I don't want to be a part of this thing that you're doing. I don't want to be around it. Even if not the drunken and the naked aspect, I know me and I have lots of sons, but something that always got under my skin was like the barbershop. Like I don't like to be in barbershops. I don't like being around the whole thing. Like their dad has to take them and all that. Now they go to a place where it's not the whole atmosphere of what happens at a barbershop. But I think we can understand that, like, yeah, it's just some places where it's good to like be in your element, doing the things that women do, having the conversation that women want to have, and the guys doing their thing where they are. But the way that he reacted to Vashti not bending to his will, I think that points to what the expectation for a wife was then and what it can be to, still to this day.
Hmm. And so you see, where I just pulled up, the whole idea of harems and eunuchs stood out to me. And so I had to put in a definition, which is like, it's pretty much what you were saying. The living quarters reserved for the wives, concubines, and female relatives of a polygamous household. But these women are, for the most part, there to satisfy the man, but they're in their quarters, and they're in their quarters also to be protected from the other men. They're with all the women together, because remembering that the eunuch is unable to do anything with them because he's been castrated. And the power that the eunuch had, that I didn't even realize that the eunuch had this much say un, until I was reading this. That the eunuch had a lot of power and so much say in what the women did, that I just looked at the eunuch as more like a guardian of the harem, but he apparently was actually more than that. So he was the guard as it says, guard for the many wives or concubines, and that a ruler might have. But the eunuch is held in confidence, in a confidential position in the harem. So, the women become.
There is a creator, and I'll send you a video. Well, you can't pull up the stuff on Instagram, but there's a woman and she's like East African, she's mixed with something else. And she does like belly dance, like fitness videos and things like that. And that sort of dancing. And if you watch people, they will say, and she says often, that this idea that belly dancing or etc. has anything to do with the male gaze is very much an American thing. She said because in her culture, she learned to dance among women, from like your grandmothers, your aunties, your whatever. Like they danced in these spaces where like men weren't even there to look at them. It wasn't about that. You would get together, you would have dance parties, when they were cooking, when they whatever, and they're together in the kitchen, they're doing their shoulder rolls and they do the things amongst each other. She said this idea of being in like mixed company and doing the thing, like, and men looking at a certain way, she's like, that's not all that there is to it. Of course, some people, that's what you do because it's kind of turned into this thing, like, a money thing, or just, when it translates to a different culture, it becomes that. But she's like, the way that she grew up, that really wasn't something that you did outside of being around other women. And the women would pump each other up and like kind of encourage each other. And so much so that when she started doing it as a fitness thing and, being public with it, she kind of got admonished by her aunts and her grandmothers and her people are like, why are you doing this? Like for everybody to see, like, why are you even doing this for
Oh,
guys?
okay.
Like, this is going to cause trouble for you
Hmm.
because people are seeing what you're doing. So it kind of reminded me of a harem, like the kind of celebrating and the kind of like freedom you have to just like be in your own skin and do all these things without worrying about men looking at you and what they think about it.
I can understand. I can see that. Can truly see how they would have been concerned about their loss of quote unquote privacy, or their ownership of this once it goes out there to everybody else. Before we, because as the time is moving, I really want to hit this thing that stood out to me, that last thing in the stories. Um, who was the protagonist? Was it Esther or was it Mordecai? And I throw that out there because I just felt like, you know, so and if any English people are there, and I'm using the terms wrong, because the protagonist is the like the star of the story, right? The main character. Everything is happening to that person. And where the antagonist is the one that goes up against the protagonist. Am I correct? Any English teachers out there? And so looking at this story, it's called the Book of Esther, but it's to me, it's the Book of Mordecai. I don't know why I want to spell his name wrong. So am I the only one that wonders about that? What do you think about Mordecai versus Esther as the protagonist, or did I lose people?
I still think Mordecai is the support.
Okay.
I agree with that because, she's the one that had to risk her life going to the king. So, and he was telling her what to do, but then there was a point where she turned around once he told her, if you're here for such a time as this. She turned it around and she said, hey, I'm going to fast, um and I need everybody else to fast with me. And then in the long version, she said, I'm going to fast and pray, and I need everybody to do that with me. So I think that she's the protagonist here, and he is the, or maybe both of them, but she got the name of the book in the Bible, so.
It's sort of like, I don't know if anyone has children young enough that you know the storyline of Moana, right? So Moana saves, her people because she finds out the secrets that were keeping them bound, like, right, like unlocking what they needed to do to be able to wayfare and go on the ocean again. Her father kind of didn't want her to get involved in it because it was dangerous. Leave things alone. You're going to get yourself hurt. But her grandmother, who dies in the story though, but her grandmother was always kind of like edging her along. Like her grandmother knew that someone needed to kind of go and get past what was keeping them bound as a people, and was encouraging Moana to, like, yeah, it's something more than what you're being told about why things are the way they are now. So go and do it. So it kind of reminds me of that, in that Esther matures throughout the story, because at first she's just kind of being turned this way and turn this way and do that and do this and not doing anything unless Mordecai directs her. But when she decides that, hey, I am going to stick my neck out to kind of like save myself, and this is how it's going to go down, right? Like Dawn just said, she didn't just like, okay, she kind of had some direction about how this thing's going to happen. And her going before the king, and how she faints. So on Thursday, they were saying she fainted from all the fasting, but how she like made it all come together. Like that was her. Like Mordecai couldn't have told. He told her, like, go and do something, but the what to do was between her and God. So I still see her as the main character.
Yeah, I just looked it up, and this is something that I think kind of helps here. It says that a similar definition, like a protagonist, is like the leading character or the main character of a movement. But a similar definition says an advocate or champion of a particular cause or idea. So I can see Mordecai as an advocate for the cause and Esther as the champion of the cause.
Okay, I'm going to put that down. But I've lost my cursor. There it is. So it was Esther is
Mordecai is an advocate for the cause,
Advocate, that was the word I was.
and Esther is the champion of the cause.
I love that.
That's why I want to put it down. I don't want to lose it. Which makes Esther is the star of the story. What was that? That was a heat wave song, wasn't it? You're the star of the story. I
Star
always.
of my show.
So Esther was the star and he was the supporting character. Yes, I like that a lot. And I just needed I needed a little help with that. So that's why I wanted to make sure I put it out there before we lost too much time.
You know, real quick, I know we're about to end, but I don't know if anyone else noticed that it makes particular point of the king being so pleased and smitten with and loving Esther, and there's never nary a word about her feeling anything about the king. There's like what she has to do and her duty, and she respects him and all that, but it's not anything about like her feelings are in it, her emotions are in it. They speak about how much the king was, in love and taken away with her. And I know there used to be the old saying that, you're supposed to get a man who loves you more than you love him and all this kind of stuff. But it kind of reminded me of that because women are always tagged with being so emotional. But Esther struck me as shrewd. Like she did what she needed to do in the situation, but I don't get the feeling that she had great feelings for him. It was more
Well,
respect than it was a love.
it did say it, and I don't know exactly where it is, but it did say that Esther abhorred being queen.
Oh yeah, I have that. I was just looking at that. How she
Yeah,
says
that
she.
was in that part C too, when she was
Mhm.
saying she didn't like being king and she didn't like wearing the garb and all of that unless she
Mhm.
Yeah.
had to and stuff.
Yeah.
And the king wasn't a particularly I don't want to say intelligent, but he like when Vashti didn't come to him, he had to ask everybody, well, what should I do?
Because he was a drunkard.
He- well, right, but he didn't like it. But then after he calmed down, then they had to tell him, hey, this is what you're going to do. This you're
Mhm.
going to have this beauty contest. And then when Haman came to him and said, this is what I want to do, he handed his signet to him and let him do what he's going to do.
Mhm.
And then, when Mordecai and Esther came to him, they said, this is what we're going to do. And he let him do what he's going to do. So he was easily manipulated. I think that's the thing.
Yes.
He was
He was a
easily
fool.
manipulated. So he was going to be an emotional person because he didn't do any thinking on his own.
He was pretty pathetic, I felt.
But when Vashti refused to come before the king and his drunken buddies, um, the other officers and royalty that were there, they feared that Vashti's behavior would cause their wives to dishonor them.
Right.
So they decreed that all women will give honor to, they had a decree put out that all women will give honor to their husbands because of Vashti's behavior.
And so Vashti was truly my shero in this in this story, even though she was there for a short period.
I want to add one other thing. I think the distinction, and even for the king in this point, he was drunk when he called Vashti in. But when Haman, I keep saying his name wrong, Haman or Naaman, Haman, when he fell on that couch with Esther, he got right. He was like, what you doing? And at that point in time, he was not drunk. So had he not been intoxicated, I'm not sure he would have done what he did with Vashti. But um, he loved Esther, and he was not going to allow um, Haman to defile her.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Maybe he learned from his mistake with Vashti.
Maybe we would hope so. I and I want to ask people about next week in just a second, but I was so pleased when we looking at the video at how you could see how very deliberate the writing style was, and with the whole mirroring thing, it started. It's like it was wrapped around this dream, starting with the dream, ending with the dream, and you could just take that comic that they put together, that poster, and you could fold it on itself, and you would have mirror images of each other. And that's why I really enjoyed the way Tim and the two guys that do the Bible project, the way that they laid it out there for us. And I just want to give a little plug for the Bible project because all those posters that they make, you can buy in a book, and you could probably spend your life reading them because there's so much detail in each one of those posters that you could take one poster a month and go through it and go through it. And then you could do it the following year and find new things. I mean, with their little posters, they really capture the Bible so well. But that's just a little plug for them. So next week is supposed to be a presentation week. So if anyone has any thoughts about a presentation, please let me know. And if you don't, I will pull from some things that I had thought about, or that I do have some suggestions from some people that I can pull from there, or people I've approached. So if anyone has something that they would be interested in speaking about themselves, or asking us all to one of us to speak about it, just let me know, but let me know before this weekend's. All righty.
Okay.
So yes, next week is a presentation week. And then after that, we will go into, after this presentation, let me go there real quick, and then we'll pray out.
Take your time.
After that, we'll go into Maccabees. We'll spend some time on the books of Maccabees.
You know what comes up for me? I don't know why this is playing in my head, but James Brown, This Is a Man's World. I don't know why it's coming to me. Because we think things are so different now, but how much things change and how much is still the same, about the world we live in.
I mean, it's so true. Even looking at when we had the whole suffragette movement, and it got something done, and then we still ended up having to have the women's lib movement, and it got a little something more done, and then we ended up under a regime that undid some things that were done, and we're under a regime that has voiced that women should be barefoot and pregnant. He hasn't said it in those words. I mean, our vice president. But that's pretty much his opinion, that women should be barefoot and pregnant. And so it's like, are you trying to take us all the way back? But we've also seen this in with the civil rights movement. We had our movement, and we got a lot of stuff done, and we paved the way. And then we are in the process of seeing a lot of the things that we got accomplished being reversed. And we'll see even more of these things reversed if we're not very, very careful, because they're very shrewd about how they undo these things. So we have to always remain cognizant about these things that are going on, because I mean the rug can be pulled right out from under us and we not even realize that it happened. And I don't mean to get preachy. So I will, a very brief closing prayer. And would someone like to read it? Okay, well then I will read it. So in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, Heavenly Father, we thank you for the gift of your word and the wisdom you've shared with us today. Help us to carry these truths into our daily lives, living in love, faith, and obedience. Bless each person here, guide our steps, and keep us in your peace until we meet again. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Good night, ladies, and thank you.
Good night, everybody.
You.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.